Where did all the snow go? The sun's out? It's getting warmer out here.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Garage Gear. I'm JB, and today is all about summarizing your snowblower. These steps are for anybody, any make or any model. So before you shove this thing in the shed or in the corner of the garage, ask yourself this question, ladies and gentlemen. Do you want your snowblower to start up perfectly the next time you get blasted with snow? Then follow these simple steps, and I guarantee you, your snowblower will start up better next winter when you go to turn it on. Time to summarize this thing. Let's get started.
Here we go. Step 1, emptying out the gas tank. Some people like to just pour gas stabilizer into the gas tank and let it be. You know what? For some people that might work okay, but the one time I did that, it never ran fine from the beginning of that season. So you know what? Here's what I'm gonna do. And every single year I do this, I drain the gas completely out. I get it all out of there. I just let it run. I sit it in the driveway for 15, 20 minutes until it completely runs itself out of gas. So that's what we are doing now. Okay, ladies and gents, you saw it. It ran for about 10 to 15 minutes. I'm actually going to attempt to restart it again. Nothing left in that tank. From a very basic standpoint, ladies and gentlemen, this snowblower is now pretty much done and ready to go and ready to be stored away. But I'm going to show you guys some next level tips here to really store this thing properly. So at this point, probably 99% of the gasoline is out of that gas tank. The last little bit is gonna be probably stored up in this carburetor bowl here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loosen this little drain nut right here, and we're gonna drain it into our pan. I'm gonna use a 10mm socket because that's what my engine requires here. I'm gonna loosen it up, and we're just gonna drain whatever's in there out. So as you can see, there was still a bit of gas still trapped in that carburetor bowl. Now that thing is completely bone dry. I, for one, am very happy now that that carburetor is completely bone dry. Even that little bit of gas could gum up that carburetor and make starting this thing up in the winter a big, big problem.
Okay, so for our next step, what we're gonna do is we're gonna set our piston at what's called top dead center. Let me show you how that works.
Okay, so let me explain what top dead center means here. Let's pretend this piston is driving up inside the engine, and here is the cylinder that it's sliding up and down in. Well, if this piston is sitting down low, what could happen to the cylinder wall here is it could start to oxidize and rust out. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull the cord so that way the piston sits right here at the top, just like this. This way it can kind of prevent that corrosion on the cylinder wall. So very simply, all we gotta do is take our cord here, and I'm gonna pull it to the point where I start to feel a lot of friction, and that's gonna let me know that the piston is at its highest point. So I'm gonna pull here, and right there, that's where I'm feeling the most friction on that cylinder going up. So right there is a good sign that that cylinder is pretty much at its highest point. So I'm just gonna let it back down, and that's it, we're done. And now that this engine is still hot, because I just ran it for about 10-15 minutes, I'm gonna drain the oil out of it. Usually on the back of most snowblowers, you will see a spout that sticks out, and this is your oil drain spout. Some will come out to the side, but most will come out to the back. And if you look closely at this one, it kind of points upward a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna elevate the front of the snowblower so it pitches backward like this. It's gonna help drain out all the old oil and get it done a little bit quicker. So now my snowblower is tipped backwards. I'm going to stick an oil pan underneath our drain spout. And from here, I'm gonna take a 5/8 inch socket and loosen up my oil fill cap. And we're gonna let it drain right into our pan. So at this point, our oil is just about done. I'm gonna reinstall our drain cap, and then I'm gonna just snug it down just like that. You don't wanna crank this down hard, because if you do,
chances are it'll be stuck on there. It'll seize to this pipe here, and the whole pipe, when you go to undo it, will twist out of the engine, and then you have an even bigger mess to deal with. So don't crank this down too tight. Just get this nice and snug. That's it. And at this point, we are now going to take our dirty oil and recycle it. And you can take this dirty oil back to any AutoZone or Advanced Auto Parts. They usually take it. Look at it this way. If they sell oil, they pretty much have to recycle it too. Now, our next step is going to be adding oil. And if you look at just about any engine on a snowblower, you will see some kind of a yellow cap or an oil fill cap. Right there will be your dipstick. We're going to take this out. On your dipstick, you're going to see a serrated area down here. You're going to see a full marker and a low marker. We want to get our oil line right somewhere back in the middle where it says okay. It may be a little hard to see, but that's where we're going to get it to. I'm going to set this dipstick aside. I'm going to put in a funnel. And ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be using a 5W30 synthetic motor oil. This will be perfect for this engine. I found that most small engines that I use run better when they run on a 5W30 full synthetic oil. Now, while that oil is still settling, before I have to check it again, what I'm going to do is take a rag and some WD-40, and I'm going to wipe down the entire surface, all the orange, all the metal on my snowblower, so that way it is fully protected and I have a slick surface for snow to slide off of. I've actually done a whole nother video on cleaning and protecting your snowblower, and I'm going to put that link down below in the description, so check it out. Alright, so now this whole snowblower is pretty much shined up. Every little surface of this thing was covered in WD-40. Now let's check our oil. Oh yeah, a little hard to see, but we are pretty much right in the middle. I'm gonna leave it at that. We're right where we need to be. Perfect. So now I have lifted up my snowblower from the front end, and it is fairly clean in here, and it's hard to believe that this machine is now 7 years old with very minimal rust spots really just along the bottom here. But if we look back, and I'm going to try to zoom back there for you. If you can see back here, this is inside the back tube where the impeller spins. My impeller kit has done a fantastic job of clearing all the snow out, but it also has worn down the paint just a little bit. And that has been that way for about 5 or 6 years now. It's just fresh metal, and it's just the way it stays. But every year, what I do is I take some kind of corrosion protection spray, and I spray this down. This is Rust Away. This is good stuff, but I'm also going to attach some links to fluid film or CRC Marine heavy duty corrosion inhibitor, and that's good stuff too. So what I'm going to do here is going to kind of get back here and just coat it all down real quick. There's another spot back up here, and ladies and gentlemen, that will do. That will remain the same for years to come. Now the three impellers back there, one's standing up here, one's kind of going down to the side here, and then another one's kind of behind this gearbox here that way. Those are kind of hard to hit. So what I'm going to do is just take some good old WD-40 here and spray all back there. I'm going to coat everything back there. Spray it all up, and this stuff will just sit there all summer long. So I want to check the gearbox on this thing. Tip it up. I'm actually going to take the wheels off first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these pins. It should just slide right off. And there it is. And we're gonna pull this pin out too. Just like that. Yeah, I pulled the one wheel off and then I pulled the other, but it looks like I've pulled part of the drive shaft off as well because they were actually sticking together. Judging by the brown color of this drive shaft, that it was kind of starting to corrode. So I'm glad I did this and took this apart. And I didn't have any issues here. I'm just kind of doing some maintenance to this at this point. What I'm gonna do now is open up the gearbox using a 10mm socket. Okay.
Alright, definitely needs a little bit of a cleaning. So looking inside here, everything actually looks pretty good. I'm gonna kind of clean up some of the grease and dirt on this gear. I'm gonna cover my disc down here so nothing lands on it. My friction disc appears to be in really good shape as well. I am going to grease the slide bar in the back. So I'm gonna slide in carefully a paper towel just to cover that big disc at the bottom, so that way I don't get any grease or grime on that, because that is what our friction disc runs on, and if it's touching that, you know, we could have some issues. So now you can kind of see how messy this gets, and this tube here is starting to show some signs of corrosion. This I'm going to slide back over this bar here, but before I do that, I'm going to coat it with anti-seize. So now, if you've never used anti-seize before, ladies and gentlemen, this is good stuff. It actually prevents metal from sticking to other metals. What I'm going to do here is mix it up real quick. It'll be on there for a while, so what I'm going to do is just kind of coat this on pretty good here. Get it all around the butt end. Okay, and that'll do for that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this drive shaft sleeve back on, and notice it's got these gear threads here on this end. This is the end that has to go in first. So I'm going to slide this on about halfway. I'm going to put a little bit more of this back on, the anti-seize, and then I'm going to coat this whole drive shaft right here. And if you notice, there's a little key slot right here. I'm going to get that in there too. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully slide this back in. Probably going to make a little bit of a mess here. There we go. And now I'm going to throw some anti-seize on this side as well. So now my next job is going to be getting some of the grease off this gear right here. And do this carefully. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grease up this shaft right here, which holds our friction disc. A little hard to see. And I'm just putting a thin amount. I don't want to goop it up. This way it'll prevent my gears from sticking, and it'll help me shift into gears much easier as the winters go on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a little marine grease right here and here on these two gears. That way it just kind of helps things move a little bit more fluidly. It's not necessary to put a ton of grease on. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lubricate this chain. I'm just going to again take a very thin amount. Could even do it like this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully pull out my paper towel here, which has some grease and some debris on it. I don't want that getting on my friction disc. This is filthy. This is the undercarriage pan that covers your gearbox, ladies and gentlemen. What I'm going to do is clean this up. Okay, so there we go. So that's the inside. Shiny clean now. It's still got a few little spots on it. That's all right. That's much better than what it was. So we're going to pop this bad boy back on. Now, this wheel is pretty dirty, pretty brown. I'm gonna use some WD-40. We're gonna loosen some stuff up here. That is clean. Check that out, minus the top here. That's a lot better. We're gonna clean this one up. So this wheel is now clean and shiny. Look at that. Much better. So now I've reinserted my key, and I'm going to now carefully line up my tire drive shaft. And if you notice, there's a key slot for it right there. We're going to carefully line this back up. Yep. Don't forget your washer on the inside. And we're going to reinstall our wheel lock. There it is. Now we're going to reinstall our wheel. Again, we're going to line up our key with the slot. There we go. And now we're going to reinstall our pin. That's it. That spins very nicely. Last thing I'm going to do down here is spray down all of these bolts that hold on my scraper bar with a protective spray. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so there you go. That's how I summarize my snowblower and get it ready for storage. I guarantee you, if you follow these steps, your snowblower will start up much better next winter. So if you have any storage tips that you use for your snowblower, please put them down in the comments below. Stay tuned for further videos, like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in to Garage Gear, and I'll see you in the garage.